beautiful surroundings. Ms. Binders, advisor to the Minister of Environment and head of delegation of Panama, Mrs. Cáceres of the CITES Committee, distinguished committee members, excellencies, party observers, and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Panama and to the 5th meeting of the Standing Committee. Heartfelt thanks to the government of Panama for hosting this meeting and the wonderful arrangements. As already the chair has pointed out, the beautiful, colorful pictures that we have behind us reminding us why we are here. I will keep my remarks short, and we have to leave enough time for the chair to give her 60-minute goodbye speech, so I will not speak too much, but we do have an intense agenda in front of us for a one-day meeting. In addition to the substantive items to be addressed today, the Standing Committee will also consider the final arrangements for the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, which begins tomorrow. As all of you are well aware, the last quarter of this year is extremely busy, with the international calendar packed with numerous meetings of critical importance to address this triple planetary crisis that we are going through. CITES parties, supported by the Secretariat, intergovernmental organizations, international and national non-governmental organizations, will all be making their contributions to move the CITES agenda forward towards the fulfillment of the CITES strategic vision agreed by all the parties. The majority of the substantive items to be discussed at this meeting relate to general compliance and enforcement matters. The Standing Committee is tasked in the respective resolutions to address these important matters that require careful consideration to ensure the legal obligations of the convention are met by the parties. The identification of interventions required, as well as where support is needed, are essential to ensure parties are empowered to strengthen CITES implementation and meet their commitments under the convention. During the 74th meeting in Lyon, France, I recall the chair urging the Standing Committee to consider the time we have available today to address all these matters, and I trust that the committee, under the guidance of our very competent chair, will, as always, engage in a constructive and efficient manner to ensure we can address all the items on the agenda. Allow me one last word to give special thanks to my Secretariat team, who have worked very hard to prepare the meeting and the documents for this meeting. I would also like to give a special hello to our colleague Pia Johnson, who, from the enforcement team, who could not be with us here in Panama as she recuperates from a bad fall and still managed to take part in the preparations. I wish you all a fruitful day of discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those opening remarks from Ms. Binder from Panama and from our Secretary General. I'd like to turn our attention to the agenda. I would just want to confirm that the translation in all 3 languages is working. Okay. ¿Tiene el español? Yeah. So the first item of the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So I'll ask the committee to turn their attention to SC 75, Doc 1, where you can see the proposed agenda for today. And I will see if there's any comments on the agenda or if we can adopt the agenda, starting with members of the committee. I'll also open the floor to observer parties. And also to observers. So, seeing no requests for the floor, the committee adopts the agenda as found in SC 75 Doc 1. So I will now turn our attention to SC 75 Doc 2. This is the rule of procedure. 2 contains the procedure of the committee as at the 7th meeting. And so I will turn first to the committee for your agreement on the adoption of the rules of procedure. I will also open the floor to observer parties. observers. Seeing no requests from the floor, I will conclude that the committee adopts the rules of procedure. And just as a reminder, this is a very large room, so if you do request the floor, please make sure to wave your card really, really high. My binoculars are here somewhere. So next item on the agenda is the credentials. So turn to the Secretariat, please introduce the Secretariat. Floor.
Gracias, presidente. Muy buen
Thank you, Madam. Greetings, and what a pleasure to be here in Panama. We have received proposals from Nigeria, Kuwait, New Zealand, Switzerland, Spain, Ireland, Israel, United States, and Canada. And still need Morocco, Congo, Ethiopia, Indonesia, China, the Bahamas, Honduras, and Peru. We hope that the credentials will keep coming, and we are now processing all the information. the application convention on, and we have to work with the scientific, administrative authorities and the science enforcement authorities in Peru. It helped us to establish the interest between the both countries, and they help us to start a roadmap which is already underway. We recognize the importance of joint actions that can have comprehensive coverage of species, and part of prioritize sharks, which of major importance to local and active regional fisheries, the junior organizations and other organizations, and the regional fisheries management. And so, aware of the complexity of managing these migratory species, we reaffirm our commitment to give priority to their management in the spaces between the two countries at the highest policy level, so that we can establish quotas for the trade in shark fins will be managed, and that there will be fisheries management to guarantee their sustainability. In the same way, and taking into account the continuous improvement process, Peru is committed to improving the data compilation and gathering system so that we can improve our knowledge of the whole fisheries value chain, and working with Ecuador, bearing in mind the high levels of trade coming from that country. Since 2014, when sharks were listed in CITES appendices, we have managed to implement the following management measures to guarantee the sustainable harvesting of these species: the establishment of quotas and fishery bans, the protection of the yellow shark, and the protection of the giant ray, and the establishment of authorized disembarkation and discharge places, the identification of shark disembarkation and the protection. Peru ratifies its commitment to continue advancing in the implementation of CITES for shark species, and we call for cooperation both from producer and importer countries so that we can have a regional plan. And the protection of these species will depend on efforts far beyond the national efforts, so we will be grateful to the Secretariat to provide support in this joint work. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. I'll turn next to Israel, please. Israel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would preface by saying that we see these compliance issues as a major importance, and we thank the Secretariat for taking proactive steps to take care of matters that appear to be heading towards an Article 13 compliance issue and dealing with them before it gets to that stage. Having said that, there are a very limited number of cases here in this document. Later in this meeting, in document 11, there's discussed a case there which, in our mind, also should be considered by the Secretariat as one that's approaching an Article 13 compliance issue, and we would seek your guidance, Chair, as to how to perhaps add this to the list of recommendations here in document number 7.1. Specifically, we're talking about document 11, paragraphs 6 through 14, which discuss trade in live tortoises from Jordan. The conclusion in document 11 says that the Secretariat will continue to consult with Jordan and will update the Standing Committee orally should it receive any further response. Without going into document 11 too much at this time, we would seek your guidance how we can perhaps keep document 7.1 open or something like that, so that we can add this issue into document 7.1 as something for the Secretariat to continue to deal with as a issue that's approaching Article 13 compliance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Israel. With regard to the issues in document 11, we'll address those when we get to document 11. With regard to Article 13 compliance issues, my understanding is that in accordance to Article 13, some of the triggers for that are the Secretariat receiving information, and so I don't think it's a question of the Standing Committee adding issues to the document or to the table, but rather parties identifying concerns or the Secretariat self-identifying concerns and instigating an Article 13 process that way. So if you as a party have issues you wish to raise, I would invite you to speak with the Secretariat. Regarding the issues in Doc 11, we will address those as a committee in Doc 11 and determine what the committee feels is the appropriate forward action at that point and give our advice at that moment. I hope that's clear. Thank you. So I will turn our attention to document 7.1 again, and I will again continue to seek comments from members of the Standing Committee, and I will also open the floor to observer parties. I will start with our colleagues from North America, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The North American region notes the report from the Secretariat regarding progress made on issues identified under Article 13 of the Convention as called for in Resolution Comp 14.3 Rev Cop 18 on compliance matters and procedures. The North American region wishes to take this opportunity to recommend that with respect to compliance matters, that the Standing Committee and Secretariat keep the scientific committees apprised of scientific issues that arise during any stage of these processes and consults with the scientific committees as appropriate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, North America. So again, I will continue to seek comments from members of the committee, and I've also opened the floor to observer parties. I have the European Union requesting the floor, followed by Vietnam. So I will start with the European Union, please. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. And first of all, we would like to thank Panama for hosting the 19th Conference of Parties and also this meeting. We are very happy to be able to meet in this beautiful country and also in great facilities. So thank you for that. We would also like to thank the Secretariat for the information, and we take note of it. With regard to the registration of operations that breed Appendix 1 animal species in captivity for commercial purposes, we would like to stress that we very much value the visit by the Secretariat in the 2 EU member states, in Spain and Germany. In our view, this visit was very useful to it provided us the opportunity to explain and demonstrate how we ensure that the requirements for captive breeding under Resolution 1016 are met. And yeah, we are ready to continue to cooperate with the Secretariat and provide additional information if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Next on my list is Vietnam, please. Vietnam, you have the floor.
Thank you. As an observer party, Vietnam would like to thank the government of Panama for its warm welcome and hospitality. Vietnam expresses our agreements with the draft SC 75 Doc 7.1 from paragraph 27 to 33, prepared by the CITES Secretariat. Vietnam would like to take this opportunity to send our sincere gratitude to Madam Secretary Yvonne Higoro and CITES mission to Vietnam on the 4th and the 6th October this year. However, in paragraph 30, Vietnam would like to specify that the annual report does not include detailed information of the numbers and depths of the cited permits of Laos PDR, leading to the misunderstanding that Vietnam still allowed to import the Dansepara cochinensis during suspension period. Vietnam CITES authorities are continuing to work with the CITES Secretariat on these important issues in the future. Thank Thank you.
Thank you, Vietnam. I'll continue to take a request from members of the Standing Committee, observer parties, and I will also open the floor to observers who wish to comment on document 7.1. So we're going to try to read the placards, but you have 2 requests for the floor from observers. I do hear general agreement with the recommendations in the document, which is primarily to take note. So it's a little hard for us to read, so I'm going to start with our observer here on the right. I would ask you to introduce your organization when you speak, and then I will turn over here. I believe that's WCS, and so I will ask you to follow. So starting over here, please introduce your organization.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. I represent the International Iguana Foundation, and the foundation expresses its congratulations and appreciation to the government of Panama and its people for hosting this meeting. I'd like to draw the attention of the committee and the observer parties to the important mention of the legality of founder stock in this document. The International Iguana Foundation believes that it is critical that CITES member states explore the legality of founder stock when considering the issuance of permits for the export of what are claimed to be captive-bred animals. In CITES, in the last couple of decades, there has been an increasing trend for traffickers to try to exploit the permit issuance process in CITES by sneaking founder stock into countries which they are confident will issue permits for the offspring of these trafficked animals. And I appreciate the Secretariat's efforts to highlight this issue, and I appreciate the efforts of the Standing Committee and the observer partners to take note of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I will now take the intervention from, I think it's WCS, but do confirm when you speak. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I am speaking on behalf of WCS, the Wildlife Conservation Society. As this is the first time we're taking the floor, we wish to join others in thanking the government of Panama for the fantastic arrangements and for their warmth. We only wish the room were as warm as the country of Panama. We agree, of course, that compliance is a key issue, and we look forward to discussing it as well during COP19. We take the floor now to address questions from the Standing Committee to the government of Bangladesh on the bird trade. Unfortunately, the Bangladesh delegation is stuck in transit and was unable to reach Panama in time to attend this Standing Committee. Just to update parties on the issue in the document, we work actively at WCS to support the government of Bangladesh to improve its CITES compliance. The Bangladesh Forest Department has shown excellent commitment to rectify the issue. After concerns raised by World Parrot Trust about irregularities last year, action was taken to stop all imports of the Appendix 1 listed Timna parrot, Psittacus erythicus timna. These first steps to take to improve the system, through which no objection certificates are issued, was also with the assistance from the CITES Secretariat, and we wish to report the situation has improved. Formal meetings were initiated in March of this year between the Bangladesh Forest Department, World Parrot Trust, and the WCS team in Bangladesh regarding problematic trade identified. The focus was particularly about suspicious trade routes and country-specific combinations, and on opportunities to address concerns to improve compliance with CITES and prevent exploitation by wildlife traders of the current permitting and inspection process. In August this year, a draft guidance documents for the process of reviewing these no-objection certificates and verifying trade in birds, CITES-listed birds, to ensure transparency and accountability was discussed. WCS has hosted and provided capacity buildings trainings on CITES across the country and will ensure that this issue is included in upcoming trainings. We welcome further support from parties and the Secretariat to ensure that this issue continues to be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, WCS. And I do hope our colleagues from Bangladesh will be able to arrive shortly. I will continue to seek any comments from the floor before concluding this item. Okay, so seeing no requests for the floor, I suggest that the committee firstly takes note of the additional updates provided by Peru, the European Union, and Vietnam regarding some of the issues identified in the document. I believe the committee will then take note of document 7.1. The committee would invite the Secretariat to continue to keep a close communication and cooperation with the parties mentioned, including asking the Secretariat to investigate further the issue regarding the trade in shark specimens. We do invite the Secretariat to present its updated findings and recommendations to SC 77. And I think the committee also would take note of the comment from the North American region inviting the Secretariat to ensure that the scientific committees are also consulted on any science-related matters that arise during the course of an Article 13 review. So those are the conclusions, I believe, from this agenda item. And I don't see any requests for the floor, so I take it that the committee is in agreement with those conclusions. Nods are helpful, thank you. Okay, and so with that, we conclude our consideration of document 7.1. So I will now turn the committee's attention to document 7.2.1 on the expedited application of an Article 13 for West African rosewoods. And I will invite the Secretariat to please introduce document 7.2.1. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la.
Thank you, Madam. This document 7.2.1 is a good example of consultation with the relevant scientific committee, that is to say the Plants Committee, and all those who are involved in this matter. We recognize the Minister of Mali, who is here with us, as well as the Minister from Sierra Leone. We would like to thank both of these ministers for having joined us here in Canada. At SC 74, the Standing Committee asked the Secretariat to launch an expedited application of Article 13 for Pterocarpus erinaceus for all of the range states, given the extraordinary circumstances with respect to that trade that appeared to be in violation of the Convention In March of 22, the Secretariat invited the 16 range states of this species to provide written justification to the Secretariat of the effect of the expedited application of Article 13, ways in which this process was not applicable to them through NDFs and legal acquisition findings, or in inviting the Secretariat to establish a zero export quota for exports of specimens of the species. 11 range states responded to this notification within the time frame established. In consultation with the chair of the Standing Committee and the Plants Committee, considered the replies received. And you have the replies in Annex 1 to the present document. The Secretariat then published notification 2022/045, setting out a voluntary zero export quota for Pterocarpus arenaceus that had been established on this website for Benin, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, Niger, Senegal, and Sierra Leone. The expedited procedure for the respect for the convention is not relevant to these parties with respect to the zero quota. In keeping with Article 13, and the expedited procedure is applicable to Cameroon, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, the Central African Republic, Chad, and Togo. And the suspension of trade of transactions of Pterocarpus arenaceus specimens with these states is applicable, has been enforced since the 28th of March of this year, since 2022-021 notification was published. This recommendation will remain in force until all of the parties concerned do publish an NDF that is with strong scientific grounding for their state to the satisfaction of the Standing Committee and the Plans Committee. This in keeping with the relevant resolution. And the states also need to provide adequate legal acquisition findings to the satisfaction of the Secretariat and the chair of the Standing Committee. This in keeping with Conf 18.7. We should note that within this procedure, Mali had requested the authorization to export some 160,000 cubic meters in keeping with the 2020-21 export quotas. Mali had submitted an NDF and an LAF. The Secretariat, in consultation with the chair of the Standing Committee and the chair of the Plants Committee, considered that neither these documents met the required conditions. Senegal informed the Senegal that it had seized 124 containers with substantial cubic meters of Pterocarpus arenaceus from Mali destined for China. Following this seizure, and at the request of Senegal, Senegal published 2263, a notification for August of 2022. And the Secretariat had an exchange with Senegal, Mali, and China in order to clarify the situation. And a letter was sent to Mali in October 22, and it is in Annex 3 of the present document. The Mali has sent a number of statements to the Secretariat and made reference to exports established for 20 and 21 had not been exported because of a stop made to exports in that period. And there was work done to establish what the stocks were, and ECOWAS work that was being done in Mali in the course of that period. Mali thus requested that the Standing Committee would enable it to export stocks based on the quotas for 20 and 21. At the request of Sierra Leone, the Secretariat published a notification that specified, among other things, that Sierra Leone had requested technical and scientific assistance in order to get technical support to publish an NDF relating to Pterocarpus erinaceus. Switzerland proposed to provide that financial assistance. The Secretariat then requested additional information to the Management Authority of Sierra Leone with respect to the current state of play with respect to the NDF. This in order to establish a roadmap for the proposed Swiss funding. The Sierra Leone then requested that the Plants Committee consider the situation with respect to all of the decisions made with respect to this species before the 28th of March notification. Sierra Leone sent a letter to the Secretariat requesting that the Standing Committee consider its export request with respect to Pterocarpus erinaceus that has been awaiting shipping until April of 2022. This letter appears in Annex 2 of the document. Madam Chair, in this context, the Secretariat would suggest that the Standing Committee update the recommendation made at SC 74, and particularly request that the Secretariat publish a notification to parties to replace 022-045 of June 22, and 2, request that CITES permits be checked by the Secretariat before they are accepted by importing parties. 3, request that Cameroon, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, the Central African Republic, Chad, and Togo give some account to the Standing Committee of progress made in the context of Recommendation 1, A and B with respect to the question of NDFs and LAFs 90 days before SC 77. This would enable the Secretariat to provide a report to the Standing Committee along with its possible recommendations. And finally, 4, to encourage parties affected by illegal trade in Pterocarpus erinaceus to actively ensure the full implementation of decisions made in order to support all wildlife crime in West and Central Africa, and to particularly focus on the illegal trade in timber in the context of decisions made at COP19. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Secretariat, for your report, which is also found in Doc 7.2.1. And I'll draw the party's attention to paragraph 17, where the Secretariat provides recommendations to the Standing Committee. And in the report, the Secretariat has underscored the recommendations numbered 1, 3, 5, and 7 in the document. With the indulgence of the members of the Standing Committee, I will also see if there are range states who are implicated or named in this document who wish to provide any additional reactions or remarks prior to turning to the Standing Committee members for their views. I appreciate your indulgence, members of the Standing Committee. I'm sure we'll all benefit from hearing from some of the range states. So I see Sierra Leone. So I will first invite Sierra Leone to provide some remarks before turning to the members of the Standing Committee. Sierra Leone, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Since this is the first time of taking the floor, we would like to thank the government of Panama for hosting this meeting. Madam Chair, Secretary General of CITES, Standing Committee members, distinguished delegates, good morning. I bring you greetings from His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Dr. Julius Maada Bio. Let me start by thanking the Secretariat and the Standing Committee for including us on the agenda to present our case. We are grateful for this. Madam Chair, on the 15th of September 2022, the government of Sierra Leone requested a special authorization of the Standing Committee through the CITES Secretariat to export consignments of Pterocarpus erinaceus that were awaiting shipment as of the 6th April 2022 within the Western area. This was due to the delay in the delivery of empty containers because the global shipping logistics had serious challenges worldwide with the supply chain, and Sierra Leone was no exception. We humbly crave the indulgence of the Standing Committee, Plans Committee, and the CITES Secretariat to reconsider our request because the consignments were legally harvested Pterocarpus erinaceus pre-notification to the parties number 2022-021. The request is only referring to the old consignment of 160,000 cubic meters. So what have we done as a government to make this request very nice for you? One, the Sierra Leone government established a stand-alone Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change to regulate all environmental issues and to also supervise all agencies and institutions dealing with the environmental issues. And the Department of Forestry and Wildlife, including others, are under my supervision as the Minister of Environment and Climate Change of Sierra Leone. Two, we have also reviewed all outdated Forestry and Wildlife Acts. The last time the Wildlife Act was enacted was in 1972, 50 years ago, and the Forestry Act was in 1988, 34 years ago. So as a ministry, we have reviewed all those acts, and we are in the process of including all major aspects of it, including the fines, penalties, etc. Three, Sierra Leone has exhibited a genuine commitment to the compliance procedure for Pterocarpus erinaceus based on document SC74 SUM 1311 13/2022 by responding to all the different communications from the CITES Secretariat via notification to the parties. Madam Chair, the government will remain fully committed to the compliance procedure in accordance with our national legislation for harvesting, transportation, and exportation of timber, all aimed at engaging in a properly regulated and legitimate timber trade, including Pterocarpus erinaceus. Madam Chair, in 2018, the government appointed a sole timber export agent charged with the responsibility of facilitating all timber exportation from the country. This decision is yielding positive results on the trade due to its well-coordinated structure, insulating it from illegal dealings along the supply chain. We will continue to enforce measures already in place aimed at preventing the timber trade from illegality, with a particular focus on the species exported. It is important also to note that every year, the government of Sierra Leone imposes a 5-month nationwide ban on logging and transporting of timber throughout the country during the rainy season. As a country, we will continue to be committed to the reforestation of degraded forest landscapes nationwide through the ongoing government-funded National Tree Planting Project with reference to the East, North, and Northwest regions, where Pterocarpus erinaceus is predominant. The overall objective of this project is to increase our forest cover by planting 5 million assorted seedlings, including Pterocarpus species, as a priority species by 2023 and 30 million trees by 2030. This will ensure the sustainability of this globally endangered species and serve as a mitigating measure aimed at minimizing the impacts of climate change and fulfilling the commitments in the country's medium-term National Development Plan and other international obligations. Madam Chair, due to the exigency in providing the NDF and LAF for Pterocarpus erinaceus, the government, through the sole timber export agent, Leadway Trading Company, has provided funds to the CITES Scientific Authority and team to start the data collection in the field. The CITES Scientific Authority, Sierra Leone, supervised by my ministry, is leading the process and is guided by the CITES information document INF 11.3 titled CITES Scientific Authorities Checklist to assist in making non-detriment findings and Appendix 2 exports. A draft preliminary report has been produced, which will serve as a basis for the international experts when conducting the NDF and ALF review, report, and traceability of Sierra Leone. So why are we making this request? As it reiterated in the several requests submitted by Sierra Leone, payments have been made to the National Revenue Authority through the government's sole timber agent before 22nd March 2022 for timber exportation. A break in the exportation of the stockpile following the huge investments made by companies is having negative impacts on the livelihoods of those involved at different stages in the timber trade. Let me also, at this point, draw your attention to the fact that the timber value chain is a source of employment and livelihood for a substantial number of the youth population. The recent social unrest in the country on the 10th of August 2022 revolved around unbearable hardships, among others, and involved youth groups who have been working at various timber depots across the western area. The government's sole timber agents also received a letter from the Solicitor for Mediterranean Shipping Company Limited for the release of 100 containers with Pterocarpus erinaceus, which have been out of business circulation for other potential customers since March 2022, pre-notification to the parties number 2022/021. In conclusion, Madam Chair, the government of Sierra Leone will continue to enforce measures already in place and devise further methods to help effectively combat the illegal trade of Pterocarpus erinaceus. We will further sanitize the business based on the outcomes of the mandated findings, that is the NDF and the LAF. Before I end, I also have my colleagues here, the ambassador, who is the advisor, is the ambassador for Sierra Leone to Switzerland, and also the head of the CITES Secretariat in Freetown, who is the director of forestry. But the ambassador will also want to throw in a word. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so very much, Honourable Minister. Thank you, Standing Committee. Thank you, Secretariat, for affording us this opportunity to present our case. We thank once again the government of Panama for the excellent preparations for this meeting. I would like to merely reiterate 2 points the Minister has made to emphasize the urgency of our request. Number one, that this request is specific to the timber already harvested pre-notification 2022-021. And we have a video that shows in really rather graphic detail the conditions of this harvested trees. They are all over the place, exposed to the elements. Sierra Leone, like Panama, is a tropical country with heavy rainfalls, and a lot of investments had gone into these, and it is impacting the livelihood of many, many, many people, thousands of people. So this is really a request to get this already harvested timber to go. And if there's some time at some point, we would like to show this video, if there's any time, so that members of the Standing Committee may see how urgent our request is. Number two, we are absolutely committed to the scientific based non-detriment finding and the legal acquisition finding. And any decision beyond after that will have to be determined by the findings, the NDF finding, with respect to further use of the timber patrimony that we have, and we would like to maintain the government's commitment to the environment, certainly to the patrimony that we have inherited and which we would like to pass on to our succeeding generations, is absolutely very high. And we thank CITES and the Standing Committee for reminding us of this great obligation. We thank you very much. As I said, we have the video, which we would like to show the Standing Committee when the time affords, but that's the pitch we would like to make. Thank you, Secretariat, for including us in this presentation. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sierra Leone. So thank you for your comments, and in particular for drawing attention to the Standing Committee for your request to consider the request to export some previously harvested pterocarpus. So the Standing Committee will take note of your request, and I'll look forward to the Standing Committee's responses in terms of the recommendations that were in the document and the additional request. I also see Molly wishes to react. So again, I will, with the indulgence of the committee, allow Molly to speak on the issues related to the species, and then we'll turn to the committee. Molly, please, you have the floor.
Merci à tout le monde.
I'd like to thank everyone, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Ministry of the Environment in Mali, and we would like to greet the people of Panama and its government for the provision made to host us today. I would also like to greet the Standing Committee and the Technical Secretariat for all of the activities that have been undertaken to help us. The CITES strategic vision is a strategy on which we agree, and we would like to develop so that our forests and fauna can avoid the harmful effects of poachers and all those who exploit our forests, and we have undertaken significant provisions to ensure that that is the case. We have already, in our transition under Colonel Asboita, we've suspended all exports in order to be able to control the situation, waiting for your decision. And when Mali started this revision and review, we were under sanctions from ECOWAS, and all of our work was blocked, and we couldn't renew our work because of the illegal actions of ECOWAS against Mali. The effects of these sanctions have meant that we tried to transit some stocks through Senegal, and that Senegal then seized this. The necessary provisions were explained to Senegal and to the Secretariat, all the provisions that we had taken. We held meetings by video conference, and we delegated some of our representatives, to go to Geneva to try and find a solution to this situation. I don't want to go through all the details that the Secretariat has already covered, but I would like to say that the projects that have been exploited are a stocked quantity which was for export. The exporters have undertaken financing and the transport, and this is now being discussed with the transporters so that we can move this stock from the existing containers. Mali has notified its support to have a zero quota export for all the specimens of Pterocarpus arenaceus, and we will be having all our information on the CITES website until we are in full compliance. And no exports took place in 2022, so we are requesting the authorization to export the existing stocks so that we are not in violation of paragraph 2 of Article 18. If we cannot resolve this through negotiation, we can submit ourselves to a solution of disputes resolution. We do not want to get to that point. We know that today, between the exploiters and some of the transporters, there have been major crises, but the companies today have more than 2,000 employees, and their families depend on this, and we are afraid of unrest around this point. So bearing in mind this question, we are asking that the exporters have legal documents and that the documents that were set up since 2020 can be issued, and so that the exporters who are victims to higher costs and extra costs because of the hiring of vehicles and containers and the costs involved in storing these shipments. And I'd like to look at the provisions of Article 2 of Article 18, and I'd like to give the floor to the head of my technical services for further details. I'd like to thank you. Following, as the Minister has said, we're not going to go over all the details, but we'd just like to provide the justification for the products that were seized in Senegal. They were already harvested before the implementation of the notification, which brought about a suspension of trade in Pterocarpus. The documents, the technical documents which justify this situation, can be made available as requested. In terms of the legality, we have set out the provisions, and Mali is in level 2 of the drawing up of convention texts, and Mali is a state that respects the convention which it has signed and is doing everything to implement the convention. So in terms of this issue, internal measures were undertaken, and the adoption of some texts which restricts the harvesting of this precious wood. And there we have stocks in a container. And today the stocks within Senegal are moving, but we have a significant stock, which is 163,758 cubic meters. Only part of that is in transit, and it was blocked in Senegal. So this whole situation, all of this quantity was acquired before the implementation of the suspension, and it is now affected by this situation. So we would like to ask if the Standing Committee could review the position on this stock concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mali. I am going to now turn to members of the committee. I'm just taking a scan to make sure no other party whose range state of the species wishes to intervene. So, committee, you have before you document 7.2.1 and a number of recommendations. There is a recommendation in particular to publish a notification to maintain the suspension on commercial trade from a number of countries. So this is paragraph 1. We've also heard from Mali a desire for the committee to allow them to export, to continue the trade transaction of an export that happened, that was harvested before the original notification. You've also got the full list of recommendations and responses in Annex 2, and we note that there is a zero export quota, I believe, for Sierra Leone, but you've also heard Sierra Leone asking a similar question about exporting some previously harvested specimens. Fundamentally, we are, as a committee, requesting to be satisfied of an appropriate non-detriment finding and legal acquisition finding. This is the basis of our previous recommendations. So I would ask the Standing Committee to now reflect and to provide me with your views regarding the recommendations in Doc 7.2.1 and the comments you have heard. I see Belgium, please. Belgium, you have the floor.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. As it's the first time Belgium is taking the floor, I want to state that we speak on behalf of the EU and its 27 member states. We would also like to thank our host country, Panama, for organizing this meeting and the Conference of the Parties in their wonderful country. We thank the CITES Secretariat for the update on this document 7.2.1, and we are pleased to see that this expedited compliance procedure seems to be paying off. We appreciate the action from the 7 range states that have requested the publication of a voluntary zero export quota. We encourage the remaining range states to provide adequate non-detriment findings and legal acquisition findings, or to request for the publication of a zero export quota as well. We call upon all range states to implement as much as possible the decisions and recommendations as described by the Task Force on Illegal Trade in CITES-listed tree species and the Wildlife Crime Enforcement Support in West and Central Africa. We think many tools and assistance is available for those range states willing to improve the situation, and these should be used maximally. We support all recommendations as mentioned in paragraph 17 of this document. With regard to the request from Mali and Sierra Leone, we thank the interventions from both countries and the additional information provided by them. We understand the difficulties mentioned, but given the abundant reports on illegal trade for this species, and the fact that both countries are included in stage 2 of the review of significant trade, we feel it's not demonstrated that an adequate non-detriment finding or legal acquisition finding was in place at the moment of harvest of the timber. Therefore, as mentioned already, we support the conclusions of the CITES Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium, for your clear advice. I will continue to seek inputs from members of the Standing Committee. I'll also open the floor to observer parties. Sierra Leone, you wish to return? You have the floor, Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief right of response. Yes, the NDF is not in place in Sierra Leone. It wasn't in place when these trees were harvested. But we are in the process of conducting it, and to the extent that the government provided initial funding to do the baseline survey, we are working very closely with CITES Secretariat. I have been there several times, and we are in negotiation. The government of Switzerland has offered to finance a part of the NDF as well as the legal acquisition finding. So yes, the delegate from Belgium is correct to say that the NDF had not been conducted when these trees were harvested, but we are in the process, very serious process of conducting them, and we are really committed to it. And after the NDF, whatever decision is made will be scientifically determined, and we look forward to the conclusion of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sierra Leone, and thank you for reiterating that work is well underway and your commitment to preparing the NDF. I'll continue to seek interventions from members of the Standing Committee. I also do invite observer parties who wish to react. I will note Mali? Mali, you wish to react again? Okay, please, Mali, you have the floor.
Thank you. With regard to this consideration of the issue, Mali has a scientific authority delivered NDF, but in looking at the documents, the Secretariat simply said that the arguments put forward by Mali are insufficient and do not justify the request. The scientific authority issued an NDF, and so Mali has an NDF for these stocks that we are requesting to cover today. So I'd like to use this opportunity to say that in relation to the application and the provisions of the Convention, Mali ensures it follows the commitments. And we are standing on our own 2 feet and trying to ensure that we respect the provisions. Until now, we haven't received any specific training on the issue. So we have a law which transposes the Convention and appoints and names the bodies, the Management Authority, and we have a Scientific Authority. And so we follow the provisions, and so we would like to request that the Secretariat show clemency, because we have drawn up NDFs, even though it's very difficult and the procedure is very complex. We are always willing to learn from others to do better. And today, the situation we are experiencing is we've communicated to the Secretariat and to China, which receives these species, and we've given the NDFs that we have available. And the suspension is something that we were not alerted on. So the 2022 products and the NDF was drawn up by a scientific authority, but we've not had any CITES permit since the 1st of October 2021. So we would really request the indulgence of the Standing Committee to review the situation when it comes to the NDFs. We're not at the zero starting point, but we are trying to ensure we meet the provisions of the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Molly, for your additional interventions. Thank you for pointing out the work you have already done on your non-detriment finding. And I believe in the document, the Secretariat did offer to consult and confer to provide any further explanations. So I'll invite you and the Secretariat to discuss. And thank you also for pointing out the importance of capacity building and training, which is one of the recommendations put to this committee, and I think one that that we all understand is pretty critical for the effective implementation of this convention. So again, I'm going to be seeking some guidance from members of the Standing Committee. I also invite observer parties to make interventions. Based on what I've heard so far, while we appreciate the comments from our colleagues from Mali and Sierra Leone, based on the document I've heard so far and in my usual assumption that silence means agreement with the document's recommendation, it is my sense that the Standing Committee is comfortable with the recommendations in paragraph 17 as they are described in document 7.2.1 and does not have additional recommendations to make. I have the floor open for members of the Standing Committee for your reactions. I also invite parties, and I will take one or two interventions from observers who might wish to also react.
Great.
Okay, so I see no further requests for the floor. So based on this discussion, with my thanks to all the interveners, it is my conclusion that the Standing Committee agrees with the recommendations found in paragraph 17 of document 7.2.1, notably to instruct the Secretariat to publish a replacement notification, to note the process of review of significant trade, to request CITES permits and certificates be verified, to invite parties to exercise due diligence, to request reports, to request the Secretariat undertake capacity building and training, and to encourage parties affected by illegal trade to actively pursue the full implementation of the decision. So this is the conclusion that I have come to based on the interventions from members of the Standing Committee. Sierra Leone, I see you wish to take the floor again. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Our request is actually very straightforward. That is just to allow the old consignment, and this is due to a lot of factors. One, there were no containers. But I want to appeal to the Standing Committee to look at what is happening in the country. We have violence. We have a video we can share with you, as my colleague was saying. Youths are out of job. This was their usual livelihood, loading the trucks and earning money for their families. And the August 10th pandemonium that took place in the country is directly related to the youths not being engaged. So I believe we still continue to appeal because the trees are already fallen. They have been harvested. They are there. Okay, the conditions are not right for them. Even if we don't export them, that is like double jeopardy because we lose them and we don't get income for them, and the youths don't get employment, and people will continue to suffer. So our position is actually to appeal to the Standing Committee to look at it again critically, because Sierra Leone as a country, we have made very significant strides towards this. I mentioned the establishment of a new standalone Ministry of the Environment to supervise forestry, wildlife, and all the other institutions dealing with environmental issues. I also mentioned that for compliance, the old Wildlife Act was of 1972. It's being reviewed, and it's been amended in the Parliament. That law was 50 years old. What that tells you is that if somebody goes to a protected area or cuts down a pterocarpus species, the fine was minimal, abysmally low. Maybe €1, that is 0.1 cent or 1 cent as far as the US dollar is concerned. We have changed that. We have increased the fines commensurate to the crime. That will increase compliance. That Wildlife Act was 1972. The Forestry Act was 1988. 34 years ago, it has never been changed. Through my leadership with my team, within a very short period of time, we have taken all those bills, in fact 6 bills, including the Environment Protection Agency, the National Protected Area Authority, Meteorological Agency, Nuclear Safety and Radiation, plus the Forestry and Wildlife. Within a short period of time, I took all those bills to Cabinet for approval, and I have taken all of them to Parliament for enactment. So you see a genuine commitment for us. And lastly, let me conclude here. We have engaged the Secretariat, as my colleague was saying, and the Secretariat has promised to provide us with technical expertise in doing the NDF and the LAF. We didn't sit down there. The government provided funds so that we start the baseline study, so that when they come, they go to the field, they will be able to see the storms, they will be able to see that we practice sustainable management of the pterocarpus species. And finally, we are also planting trees. I mentioned about the 5 million trees by 2023, that is end of next year. We've already done about 2.8 million, including some pterocarpus species. And by 2030, we want to plant 30 million trees, all from government funds. That is commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I do recognize that we have a very long agenda ahead of us. So, sorry, I interpreted you had concluded. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you so much for your intervention, Sierra Leone, and thank you again for reminding us that you had a video. I do not have time to play a video during our deliberations. I apologize for that. I will consult with the Secretariat to see if there's an opportunity to display your video over the lunch break so that the Standing Committee can benefit from your hard work there. However, for this particular decision at this time, it seems to me that the Standing Committee would like to remain with the recommendations found in paragraph 17 of document 7.2.1. And so I think my conclusion is still that the Standing Committee agrees with the recommendations in paragraph 17, paragraphs 1 through 7. I do hope that there'll be an opportunity for your video to be shared for those who have the opportunity to watch it over the lunch break. And of course, there are multiple methods for bringing matters to the attention of the Standing Committee. So we can advance in that way. So I would very much like to conclude this item. I am very cognizant that we only have one day and we still have quite a number of issues to get before us. So I will take a very short and final intervention from Mali, and then I'm going to conclude this item. Mali, please, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Madam I'm sorry to be requesting the floor once again, and I don't mean to overstress our concerns. However, let me just say the following. We have had discussions with the Secretariat that have proved useful in this matter, and we would really like that there be active work done with respect to the decisions taken following our meeting with the Secretariat. And it really, we don't think this matter has ever come up at a COP. The minister is here to specifically deal with this matter, and this is something that we as the authorities are having some difficulty fully understanding. We really do need to ensure that people understand the problems with respect to our factories and youth employment. If this is a question that is going to take up yet more time, we as a country are going to have some difficulty in dealing with the consequences of our meeting. I would like to invite the Standing Committee and the Secretariat to please look at all this very carefully indeed so that we can have this matter expedited as soon as possible. We need to have this wood shipped without any further delay because it is a matter of serious concern to us. What we're trying to do is show that what we are doing, and we would like to be listened to. We are a Sahel nation, yes. We are members of the convention, and we respect our obligations. If we ratified it, is because we are committed to it, and we want to do the best possible for our people, yes, but also to protect our wildlife. So we would be very grateful if these facts could be taken into account, and we would welcome a bilateral meeting in the context of this meeting as soon as possible. And we would like to ensure that we can keep an eye on the situation. If I may, I would like to remind this distinguished meeting that we need to look at the situation in Mali because until 2010, this species was protected from any form of exploitation in Mali, and it was the sheer abundance of the species that we decided to reclassify it as partly protected and that therefore could be harvested. So that is how the idea of added value came up, and that is how exports once again became a possibility. Mali has kept careful documentation of all exports of this wood. When the species was not an Appendix 2 listed species, we had the export certificates that were always delivered by the management authority. Then, when in 2016 it was Appendix 2 listed, we used the right documentation, the export certificates, and that is the case until today. Now, Sierra Leone has talked about a video to show the meeting. You should bear in mind that we too have our possibilities, and we can show that we are in a position to manage the species properly in Mali. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mali, and thank you, Sierra Leone. I think we can take note of the desire of both Mali and Sierra Leone to have an expedited consideration of their requests in future. And again, I conclude that the Standing Committee agrees with the recommendations found in paragraph 17, paragraphs 1 through 7. And with that, I will conclude our consideration of document 7.2.1, and I will turn our attention to the next document, 7.2.2, and I will ask the Secretariat to please present this document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning.
I'm speaking to document SC75, numbers 7.2.2 on the implementation of Article 13 in Lao People's Democratic Republic, Lao PDR. You will recall that the Standing Committee discussed the compliance matters related to Lao PDR at its meeting in Lyon in March earlier this year. At the meeting, the committee adopted a revised set of recommendations and agreed to review progress at its 77th meeting next year. The committee also invited the Secretariat to provide an update at the present meeting. So the present document is based on a report that Lao PDR sent to the Secretariat in September. In addition, the Secretary General undertook a mission to Lao PDR in early October to review progress on the implementation and to engage with senior officials and policymakers in the country. As set out in the documents, she met with the Minister of Agriculture and Forestry, who is the head of in which the CITES Management Authority is based. In terms of implementation, there are some areas where Lao PDR is making good progress, in particular on the NDF for Dalbergia. And there are areas where the implementation must be accelerated. This is in particular with regard to the conversion of wildlife farms and with regard to legislation for the implementation of the convention. In conclusion, I would like to draw your attention to the recommendations set out in paragraph 34 to 37 of the document. The committee is invited to take note of the document, to reiterate its recommendations made at SC 74, to urge Lao PDR to finish the decree on the implementation of the convention that has been underway for a couple of years now. Maybe we can give the floor to Lao PDR to see if there's any news in this regard. And finally, to invite Lao PDR to provide a progress report by the end of July 2023 for the Secretariat to report to the next meeting of the Standing Committee to take place in November next year. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretariat, for your report. Noting that the Standing Committee has already agreed to review progress at its 77th meeting more thoroughly. If the Standing Committee again will agree, I will first see if Lao PDR is present and wishes to add anything to the report provided by the Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, CITES Secretariat, for giving me a floor. Dear Madam Chair and all delegates, very good morning. Since this is the first time to take the floor on behalf of the Lao government, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Panama for excellence organizing and hosting this important conference, and also I would like to express my delegation profound gratitude and appreciation to the CITES Secretariat for the generous hospitality accorded to us and for the excellent arrangement for the document 7.2.2. The document provides a comprehensive summaries and observation by the CITES Secretariat on the progress we have reported and earnestly continuing to implement the Article 13 recommendations, particularly those updated and agreed at the last 74th meetings of the Standing Committee last March this year. We are also grateful for the continued technical support provided, including the recent visit to the country by the CITES Secretary General and the team, and also the other contribution from German partners and non-government organizations in Lao PDR in their tireless effort in assisting us to reach CITES compliance. In addition to the report provided by the Secretariat to the Standing Committee, we also would like to, we wish to provide the following progress since the visits of the CITES Secretary General and the team in the Lao PDR in last October this year. I would like to share with you that as apart from the related legislations that have been approved and endorsed by the government, the Prime Minister decrees on CITES implementations had also been endorsed. Having these new decrees make us every confidence that we from different sector and development partners, we bring positive change and promote the wish of the governments of Lao Vida achieving compliance with our obligation under the CITES. Since 31st October this year, we have received the results of the tiger DNA analysis of the collected tissue samples in tiger captive facility in Lao Vida from the tiger site audit implemented from 2019-2020. We are very grateful to the Malaysian government and their officer at the National Wildlife Forensics Laboratories for their tremendous assistance and support in the analysis of the tiger sample collected. We are now in the process of interpreting the results, and the result will be helpfully provide information to the management of captive facilities for tiger in the Lao Vida and enforcement in relation to the illegalities. We would also like to thank all development partners and CITES party members for assisting and contributing to our substantial achievement. The government of the Lao Vida is deeply committed to continue to welcome the recommendations made by the CITES Secretariat to the Standing Committee, and that we will employ more labor and effort to implement these recommendations in order to promote visits of the Lao government achieving compliance with our obligation under the CITES. And we will report these magnificent outcomes in the 77th Standing Committee meeting in next year. Last but not least, allow me to sincerely thank to the CITES Secretariat for always continuing support and assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lao PDR. So I will now turn to members of the Standing Committee for any reactions. Just a reminder, we are invited to take note of the report, and we can additionally note the additional information from Lao PDR, reiterate recommendations, urge Lao to finalize, and then again, we will consider the recommendation to suspend trade at the 77th meeting as we had previously agreed. So I will see if there's any comments from members of the Standing Committee. I will start with Ireland, please.
As it's the first time Ireland is taking the floor, I want to clarify that we speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We would like to thank Panama for hosting the Standing Committee, the Conference of the Parties, and for their warm welcome. We would like to thank the Secretariat for preparing this document and for the mission to Lao PDR by the Secretary-General in October 2022. We are pleased to read the submitted progress report by Lao PDR, the progress made with regard to the non-detriment findings for Dalbergia species, and its subsequent request to the Secretariat to publish a zero export quota for 2022 and 2023 as a precautionary measure. We regard these efforts as a commitment of Lao PDR to the Convention. Nevertheless, we are concerned to read about the ongoing delays in implementing key recommendations of the Standing Committee, notably the lack of adopting appropriate national legislation for the implementation of the Convention. Therefore, we support all recommendations of the Secretariat and strongly urge Lao PDR to implement them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ireland. I'll continue to see if there's interventions from members of the Standing Committee, and I'll also open the floor to observer parties. Thailand? Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the first time that Thailand is taking the floor, so Thailand would like to express our gratitude to the Panama government for the warm welcome and organizing the excellence for this festival in beauty. And also, we would like to thank for the CITES Secretariat for updating this document, SC 75, document 7.2.2. Thailand has seen the further progress of the Lao PR in implementing of the recommendations agreed at the SC 74 regarding the main aspects, such as the management of export of Lao species, the national legislation of CITES, law enforcement, and also tiger captive breeding facilities. Regarding the law enforcement matters, Thailand would like to support the Lao PDR to conduct the activities related to the application of the Article 13 on the international measures. Thailand has discussed with Lao PDR to support organizing the bilateral meeting on strengthening trans-boundary collaboration on tackle illegal wildlife trade and related issues between the two countries in early next year. And also, Thailand can share our experience and knowledge on improving law and regulation on wildlife management and trade. CITES Thailand has enacted the new effective laws on wildlife preservation and protection in 2019. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thailand, for your intervention and for indicating your desire to support Lao and begin some bilateral meetings for cooperation, transporter cooperation. I will continue to see if there are any requests from the floor from parties and, as of course, standing committee members. Indonesia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indonesia would like to thank the Secretariat for the report and appreciate Lao for the progress on the CITES implementation. We recommend Secretariat to continue assist Lao for preparing the report to be submitted for the coming SC 77 meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia. Pardon me. I will continue to take interventions from members of the Standing Committee. I also invite observer parties, and I will see if there are one or two observers who wish to intervene. So I will take a last intervention from the observer in the back. I think I'm hearing EIA, but please do introduce yourself prior to beginning your intervention.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, this is the Environmental Investigation Agency. Since this is the first time we are taking the floor, I would like to thank the Government of Panama for hosting this conference in such a beautiful part of the world. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you for your excellent stewardship of the Standing Committee. I'm making this intervention on behalf of Born Free, EIA, 4Paws International and SSN. We recommend that the Standing Committee specifically ask Lao PDR to report to SC 77 on enforcement measures taken against the criminal enterprises that control the 5 tiger farms in Lao, where the number of tigers has increased from 344 at the time of the 2019 tiger farm audit to 451 as reported to this meeting. This includes the tiger and bear farm at the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone, which is 80% owned and controlled by the King's Romans Group, a US Treasury Department designated organized crime group involved in drug, human, and wildlife trafficking. Likewise, the company that owns one tiger farm in Lao, whose co-owner was jailed in 2020 for 6 years in Vietnam, for trafficking tiger cubs from Laos to Vietnam. Also, the company that is associated with 2 tiger farms and is part of the Moazu Chroma ivory trafficking network, Chroma having recently been convicted in the US. And finally, the other tiger farm from which 300 tigers disappeared unaccounted for between 2016 and 2017. Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
EIA. So, seeing no further requests for the floor, it's my conclusion that the Standing Committee agrees with the recommendations found in document 7.2.2. So the Standing Committee takes note of the progress report and notes the additional information provided by Laos orally. The Standing Committee reiterates the recommendations made at its 74th meeting and urges Lao PDR to finalize and issue the decree in line with the comments made by the Secretariat. The Standing Committee also reiterates that it will consider the recommendation to suspend trade at its 77th meeting if progress on implementation is considered insufficient. And finally, the Standing Committee recommends that Lao PDR submit a report by 31 July 2023 on its progress on implementation of the recommendations in order for it to be considered at the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee. With those conclusions, we conclude our consideration of document 7.2.2. And I'll turn our attention then to document 7.2.3, the application of Article 13 in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I will ask the Secretariat to please present this document.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam. At its 74th meeting, the Standing Committee made a series of recommendations with respect to the DRC, with respect to Article 13. These recommendations were made on the basis of a report the DRC submitted in March of 2021, as well as a statement made by the DRC, presented by the Republic of the Congo at SC 74. The RDC had provided an update report a few days before the meeting, but the Secretariat had not been in a position to consider it and develop new recommendations for SC 74. The Standing Committee invited the Secretariat to consider the new report and make revised relevant recommendations to this meeting. And the Secretariat would note a number of things. With respect to the repatriation of a stock of pangolins seized in 2021 in the DRC, in the Republic of Congo, moving towards the DRC, following SC 74, the parties have provided information to the Secretariat in order to meet the concerns raised. The pangolins in question have been, the stocks have been repatriated, and the stock are now being held at the Office for Management Criminal Records at the National Police of the DRC, and they are in fact going to be burned at a special ceremony. We would like to invite the DRC to provide an update on this situation at this meeting. In this regard, the Secretariat would recommend going back on the recommendations made by SC 74 with respect to the trade in pangolin stocks, maintaining the paragraph recommending the states not authorize the trade in specimens of pangolin specimens held in the DRC, in keeping with the COP18, but to delete the paragraph asking that the management authorities of the DRC and the Republic of the Congo provide information, as that has been done. With respect to the illegal trade in wildlife specimens, the Secretariat has noted that the DRC has made significant efforts, in particular with respect to pangolins and elephants. Given the nature of this and significance of the traffic and recent seizures, and it is important that the criminal networks be dismantled. We would recommend that the recommendation made to SC 74 be deleted. That recommendation asked the DRC to enhance its efforts to analyze data available in order to track criminal groups and bring together multidisciplinary teams in order to carry out investigations and operations. This is covered more specifically with respect to the National Ivory Action Plan and the fight against wildlife crime in West Africa and Central Africa. The Secretariat, however, does note that no significant capacity building has been carried out with respect to the scientific authority on the question of CITES ceratacus trade has been reported. We would therefore recommend that we stick to the recommendations made by SC74 on capacity building. The Secretariat would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the authorities of the DRC for the effort made, particularly with respect to the fight against illegal trade, and would like to take this opportunity to thank partner and donor parties for their support, technical and financial, in this regard. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Secretariat. As with the previous, I was going to see if the Democratic Republic of the Congo was present and wished to react prior, with the indulgence of the Standing Committee, of course. But I don't believe they are present. So I will turn to members of the Standing Committee. You've heard the report of the Secretariat, and based on that report, the Standing Committee is invited to update and replace the recommendations adopted at the 74th meeting with those found in paragraph 31 of document 7.2.3 Rev 1. So I will turn first to members of the Standing Committee for any reactions. I will take the intervention from Belgium, please. Belgium, you have the floor.
Thank you. We congratulate the Democratic Republic of the Congo for their work and applaud the significant progress made. Nevertheless, it remains clear that action still remains very much necessary given the ongoing high levels of illegal trade. We support the adoption of the recommendations as suggested by the CITES Secretariat, but we also request the re-inclusion of the recommendation on illegal trade mentioned in paragraph 23. As it's not yet clear what decision will be taken on the NIA process, nor on COP document 36.1, and because this recommendation is a global one, not only limited to ivory, we suggest to maintain it, be it with a slightly different wording, taking into account the work already done. So we suggest in the beginning to replace the word intensify by continue. So it would read, the DRC shall continue its efforts to conduct analysis of available information to map organized crime groups active in the country and convene multidisciplinary investigative teams involving all relevant authorities to work in close collaboration with local authorities in key identified areas and initiate intelligence-driven operations and investigations with a particular focus on pangolins and ivory. We would like to add one sentence saying that these actions should become incorporated in the work of DRC. The intention would be that this becomes structural and formalized work, not only depending on the assistance of UNODC. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. And to ensure that I have captured and that all the committee members have captured your request, so in paragraphs 23 through 27 of the document, the Secretariat reports on the measures regarding illegal trade and makes a recommendation to delete the previous recommendation from the Standing Committee. I understand from Belgium that you wish to retain the recommendation, which shall read, DRC shall continue its efforts instead of intensify. However, it sounded as if you also wish to add to that recommendation, and if that is the case, could you please read the addition you wish to make slowly? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and apologies for being too fast. We suggest to add one sentence at the very end to read, these actions should become incorporated in the work of DRC. And the rationale for that is that as a currently it's very much depending on the assistance of UNODC, whereas this should become like a structuralized, formal part of the work of DRC. Thank you.
So the additional sentence would read at the end after Ivory, these actions should become incorporated in the work of the DRC. Full stop. Okay, I will continue to take interventions from members of the Standing Committee on the recommendations found in paragraph 31 and the additional comments made by Belgium. I will also seek any interventions from observer parties who wish to react. I see a request from the United States. The United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States would also like to thank Panama for hosting us during these meetings for the next 2 weeks. The United States supports the comments that were made by Belgium, and we would like to add or to amend and propose the language of incorporating into the national measures of the DRC to the end of that sentence.
Thank you, United States, and thank you. And so the addition from Belgium, the United States is supporting replacing work with national measures. I think that's to provide a bit more precision. And I see Belgium nodding on that. I see actually a few heads nodding, so that's helpful. I will continue to seek any further interventions on the recommendations, including the comments made by Belgium and the United States from members of the committee. I will also invite observer parties. And I will take silence to mean agreement with the recommendations, including the amendments provided by Belgium with the tweak from the United States. I'll also open the floor now for any observers who wish to react before concluding this item. In the far right corner, I would invite my friend to please introduce yourself, and then you may take the floor as an observer, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Humane Society International. And first of all, as it is our first time taking the floor, I would like to, as others have, express our thanks to Panama for hosting this meeting in this magnificent facility. It's a pleasure to be here. Just on a personal note, I'd also say that it's not only very nice to be back into the CITES fold after missing the last COP, but to be in time to hear the chairman's concluding remarks, which I await with great interest. Anyway, I am making this intervention on behalf of HSI, the Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, Pro-Wildlife, Species Survival Network, and the Wildlife Conservation Society. We welcome this document and we're encouraged by the progress made by the DRC and encourage the country to continue its efforts to combat wildlife crime. However, noting the interventions of Belgium and the United States, we also do not agree with the Secretariat's recommendation in paragraph 27 to delete the recommendation adopted by the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting, set out in paragraph 23, that the DRC shall intensify efforts to conduct analyses of available information to map organized crime groups active in the country. We feel not only that it is important to maintain this recommendation, but that it should be expanded to focus on gray parrots and protected primate species, as well as on pangolins and ivory. We'd suggest adding that. This recommendation should be seen as an encouragement to DRC to continue its progress and on other parties to support the DRC's efforts as a matter of priority. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Humane Society. So I do not see any further requests for the floor. So it's my understanding, based on the discussion that we've had, that the Standing Committee agrees with the recommendations found in paragraph 31. So these are subparagraphs A, B, C, D, and E. And the Standing Committee further agrees to retain the recommendation regarding illegal trade. So this was recommendation E at SC 74, and it is found in paragraph 23 of the current document. In retaining this recommendation, the Standing Committee agrees to edit the recommendation to replace the word intensify with continue its. And the Standing Committee also agrees to add an additional sentence at the end of the recommendation that reads, "These actions should become incorporated into the national measures of the DRC." So those are what I take to be the conclusions of the Standing Committee regarding document 7.2.3. And with that, I will conclude the consideration of document 7.2.3 and turn our attention to agenda item 7.2.4. And I believe I can start with the Standing Committee, with the Secretariat on that one. I will always start with the Standing Committee. Secretariat, please introduce this item.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At 74th meeting, the Standing Committee reviewed a series of recommendations with regard to Guinea within the framework of Article 13 of the Convention on the export of pre-convention specimens of Pterocarpus erinaceus and the management of and issuance of CITES permits and certificates and respect of the convention. And so the Standing Committee requested that Guinea submit a report to the Secretariat on the implementation of these recommendations before the 77th session. That's why there is no written report submitted to this meeting. Nevertheless, some progress has been made by Guinea, and this is what we would like to present orally. First of all, the Secretariat and Guinea have signed an agreement within the framework of the Compliance Assistance Programme, and we hope to start the implementation of these activities immediately after the Conference of the Parties. There was a minor problem with the payment of the first segment of the financing, but the Secretariat is doing everything to mitigate this problem. When it comes to the export of pre-convention specimens of Pterocarpus erinaceus, the Standing Committee decided to allow, on an exceptional basis, the export of pre-convention stockpiles of a maximum volume of 14,000 cubic meters due to the delays brought about by the COVID-19 crisis and the coup d'etat, which took place in September 2021 in Guinea. The Standing Committee extended this deadline and authorized Guinea to export the stock before the 13th of November 2022, that is today. Since the last session of the Standing Committee, the Secretariat has been in very regular contact with Guinea on the export of this stock. And Guinea has submitted a new list of members of the follow-up committee for export of the stock in May 2022, 2022, and several meetings were also held with the authorities in Guinea and the transport companies chosen for this export. These were, in fact, reticent to export because of the recommendation for a suspension of commercial trade in Pterocarpus aeruginosus within the framework of the expedited procedure on the application of Article 13 when it comes to rosewood from West Africa. And we've just discussed the subject. In accordance with the latest information, 95 containers, which is around 1,600 cubic meters, have been loaded, controlled and sealed and have arrived at the port of Conakry. Nevertheless, it is our understanding that they have not yet left Guinea. The Secretariat invites Guinea to present an oral update of the procedure for the export of the timber stock to this session. We understand that Guinea has not yet arrived in Panama, so perhaps there's another member of the Standing Committee who could speak on their behalf. Thank you, Madam Chair. I beg your pardon, Madam Chair. I forgot to announce that Guinea submitted a written report yesterday to the Secretariat. We published it this morning as an information document to the Standing Committee. It's available on the website.
Thank you, Secretariat, for providing an oral update. And it's unfortunate our colleagues from Guinea are not present, but I understand that they have asked one of the representatives of the Standing Committee to provide some information. And so I believe Morocco. Please, Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Kingdom of Morocco is speaking for the first time, and we would like to thank the government of Panama for their excellent organization of this conference. And I am speaking as a member of the Standing Committee and representative of the Africa region at the request of the delegation of Guinea, who has been unable to be present today to present their report. The report was submitted yesterday evening on a number of provisions which were undertaken by Guinea on the particular point of the timber stocks. A commission made up of police agents, customs agents has been put into place, and following the report of the follow-up, the work for the export of the pre-convention stock started on the 14th of September 2022 in Kunita and then in Fassia on Saturday, the 17th of September in the prefecture of Kouera. On the 4th of October 2022, stocks were loaded, checked and sealed, which covered the number of states, and that's the equivalent in cubic meters. In terms of the export within the field, this is developing well. The stocks of Pterocarpus aeruginosus, which is a pre-convention, will be starting soon. A number of recommendations were also issued on the report, and they mention the following. With the social and political changes that the country is experiencing, the fight against crimes against animals and plants are causing major challenges. The activities have led to the fact that these difficulties nevertheless mean that the export has been taking place well, and the authorities have recalled their support for the protection of nature, and there has been full commitment for the campaign for 2022, and the new institutions have been set up. Nevertheless, the difficulties are still very present when it comes to fighting crime in flora and fauna, and we need to improve results so that they can fight more effectively against wildlife crime. We make the following recommendations. The raising of sanctions against Guinea, which have been in place since March 2013 at the Standing Committee meeting. Accelerating the availability of financing for the CAP and implementing a capacity building program for the setting up of indicators and to help with enforcement against wildlife crime. This will be a precious tool to look at the efforts made against wildlife crime. We call for the organization of workshops for new officials who are looking at forestry and wildlife resources, and they need the necessary and suitable training to be more effective in the field. Thank you, Madam Chair, for having given me the floor to speak on behalf of Guinea, and I'd like to thank the members of the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco, for presenting the views of Guinea in their absence. And I do take note of the requests made by Guinea via the report you provided. And I also note that a written report has been provided yesterday and is available as an information document. It's my suggestion that the Standing Committee take note of the report from the Secretariat and additionally take note of the additional information provided by Guinea as read by our colleague from Morocco. So that would be my suggestion for this item, and I will turn to see if there are any reactions from members of the Standing Committee. And I will also open the floor to observer parties. And I will seek as well any interventions from observers. Okay, seeing no requests for the floor, it's my conclusion that the Standing Committee takes note of the oral report and update provided by the Secretariat and provided by Morocco on behalf of Guinea. So, thank you. I believe that will conclude our consideration of document 7.2.4. And it had been my hope to conclude all of 7.2 before lunch, but I'm wondering if we're running out of time. One moment, please. So in the interest of recognizing that we do have limited time and there is still about 10 minutes before our break from lunch, I suggest we open document 7.2.5, the application of Article 13 in Nigeria, and we will see how far we get before lunch. So I will invite the Secretariat to please introduce document 7.2.5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At SC 70 and SC 74, the Standing Committee reviewed the effective implementation of CITES in Nigeria in accordance with the provisions of Article 13 of the Convention. At At SC70, the Standing Committee adopted a set of recommendations which included, inter alia, a recommendation to suspend commercial trade in specimens of Pterocarpus erinaceus, and recommendations to Nigeria to take strong enforcement actions against organized criminal networks involved in the illegal trade in pangolins and ivory. At SC74, the committee reviewed the progress made by Nigeria and agreed a new set of recommendations contained in the summary record of SC74. The committee inter alia requested Nigeria to report on progress with the implementation of the committee's recommendations in time for the present meeting. Pursuant to this recommendation, Nigeria submitted a report to the Secretariat in May 2022. The report is available in the annex to the present document in English only. The Secretariat has assessed Nigeria's report and shares its findings in the present document. In sum, the Secretariat acknowledges Nigeria's progress with the implementation of some of the Standing Committee's recommendations, in particular those related to the handling and disposal of seized stockpiles of CITES-listed species, and certain legislation and law enforcement-related provisions. The Secretariat welcomes, in particular, the finalization of the National Strategy on Wildlife and Forest Crime in Nigeria and the establishment of a special wildlife office under the Nigeria Customs Service. The Secretariat also welcomes Nigeria's responsiveness and looks forward to further supporting the party under the Compliance Assistance Program. The Secretariat proposes that the Standing Committee revise and update its recommendations adopted at SC74 as suggested in paragraph 25 of the present document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. Thank you for that report and for drawing the committee's attention to paragraph 25, where the Standing Committee is invited to revise and update its recommendations by agreeing the revised recommendations found in paragraph 25. Again, with the indulgence of the Standing Committee, I will see if Nigeria is present and wishes to react. Nigeria, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Since this is the first time we are taking the stage, we want to thank the government of Panama for well-organized meeting like this, and we thank them for all their efforts to see that we are all here. We acknowledge the scale of the wildlife crime crisis taking place in Nigeria. The organized criminal groups utilize our country as a source and transit hub for illicit wildlife products, as well as documented in a cause for serious concern for Nigerian government. As recognized in SC 75.7.2.5, Nigeria is very pleased to announce the launch of the National Strategy on Combating Wildlife and Forest Crime in Nigeria. We have come with a lot of copies, and which they'll be ready to distribute the hard copies and also the soft copies. This strategy serves to address many of the capacity and compliance gaps that have existed in CITES and wildlife law enforcement in Nigeria, and we are encouraged that its implementation is already making great strides towards CITES implementation and compliance in our country. With regard to the recommendation by the Secretariat concerning the law enforcement, we are pleased to report that Nigeria is working with the USAID, WABILET project, and the INL Enhancement Wildlife Law Enforcement Capacity in West African project to establish a wildlife law enforcement task force for Nigeria. The task force will serve as an implementation mechanism for our national strategy and will address the need for cooperation between all relevant and national authorities. Nigeria has already undertaken needs as a next assessment process for the establishment of this task force and hope that it will be operational by the early 2023. Nigeria further notes that these efforts are also integral to the national and regional implementation of the West African strategy in combating wildlife crime. And we are looking forward to discussing the West African strategy in the COP19. A lot of processes have been done towards making sure that we checkmate the illegal wildlife trade, particularly on rosewood. Since the suspension of rosewood, there's no certificate or permit has been given to anybody, to export rosewood from Nigeria. Chair, we note in particular the recommendation in this document inviting importing parties to share with the Secretariat the legislative and enforcement arrangement they have made or put in place to sanction illegal trade in Pterocarpus erinaceus, and inviting these parties to strengthen cooperation between range states and importing countries. Nigeria strongly supports this recommendation, and we cannot hope to fully stem the illegal trade without the true support of the consumer parties. And in this regard, Nigeria has entered into MOU with Cameroon and also
a very reliable source of survival.
In the process, we are about to sign MOU with Vietnamese. Also, quite a lot of processes have been done. We have trained. We have been able to train our prosecutors, our judges, also increase participation at our borders, and then the seized items or specimen, approval has been obtained to destroy them, and we are at the point of destroying these seized items. And also, the CITES Secretariat is helping us with a CAPS, that's Compliance Assistance Program. We have supplied all the necessary information that is needed. We are just ready to receive the funds so that we can start the implementation. Madam Chair, I hope that this initiative by Nigeria serves to demonstrate our commitment towards addressing wildlife crime and enhancing our compliance with CITES requirements. However, this is not a matter of Nigeria. This is not a matter that Nigeria can handle alone. We very much need the assistance of CITES in identifying and apprehending those criminals responsible for the large-scale criminal activities taking place in our country. The resources required for these tasks are significant, and we are looking forward to discussing during the COP19 with a new CITES enforcement fund assist our country in addressing this challenge more effectively. Nigeria once again thanks the Secretariat for its support and assistance, and we are at the Secretariat's disposal to ascertain how best to continue the enhancement process. And we are hoping that at the end of this COP19, the suspension will be lifted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigeria. I am going to thank the Secretariat and thank Nigeria for the report and for the comments. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to paragraph 25 and the updated recommendations. I will see in the next few minutes if there's any reactions from first the members of the committee to the updated recommendations. I'll also see if I have reactions from observer parties. Belgium, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We acknowledge the process made by Nigeria and support all recommendations of the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. Again, I will see if there are any interventions from members of the committee and from observer parties. I would also invite 1 or 2 quick interventions from observers. So, seeing no requests for the floor, with our thanks to Nigeria for your further information, it's my understanding that the Standing Committee agrees to revise and update its recommendations as documented and found in paragraph 25, paragraphs 1 through 6. So that would conclude our consideration of Doc 7.2.5, and this would be a good time, I'm sure, for everyone to break for lunch. I will see if there are any logistical announcements before we break for lunch, and I understand that the video that our colleagues from Sierra Leone mentioned is available for viewing here during the lunch break. Any further logistical announcements? Back at 2? Great. Well, then have a good lunch, everyone, and I will see everyone back here at 2 p.m. Thank you. And since no one's left the room, I think we do have an announcement about voting cards for tomorrow. So, Secretariat, please.
So the voting cards will be available at the information booth during the lunch break. So if you can go right in the middle of the lobby, my colleague will proceed there, and you can pick up your voting cards then for the parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat.
Timber has been a very reliable source of survival for Sierra Leoneans, especially the youth who are largely dependent on activities around logging to take care of themselves and their families. However, on March 28th, timber has been a very reliable source of survival for Sierra Leoneans, especially the youth who are largely dependent on activities around logging to take care of themselves and their families. However, on March 28, 2022, CITES Convention suspended commercial trade in timber, which has left millions of logs that were cut prior to the ban to perish in different parts of the country.
My name is Mohamed Ali Mansouri. I'm the manager of this wood company in Songo. This woods we bought them since November 2021. Then after that, we have a ban on March 2022. And we cannot export the woods now. It's because we cannot export the wood now, we have so many losses. So please, we are pleading to the government to see how best they can do to allow us exporting this wood, because if they still stay here, they will depreciate their values.
Many unemployed youth are pleading for the ban to be lifted, even if temporarily, to enable the exportation of the logs that had already been cut before the ban came into force. This, they say, will invariably alleviate their suffering.
Would they beg to the government to go to the leader there? The one who is responsible for lifting in there.
For how many live to this banner for this timber? And like now for only 6 months or you reach or you pass, no problem for low clear. In the same condition, some of we get family there. Me like what in Apsu, I guess 7 people who they bear me. It is now possible they can suffer not one with the same condition now. So they beg the international committee with that concern towards this year. When they live to this banner. So some of my company. Then in the street right now, so then they do once you see some of them they go and do bad in the street. Most of them we check them at Timberman there. Because of this okay stop. So now we check with brother them, most of them are the cause trouble when they smoke that when they get that cruise. Because now the frustrating cause that. But more time if you get outside your church, you engage or net scam or even take cam. You go now you go lay down. But most of the right hand then because they frustrate.
Look now, we don't see a poke now there. How they live? One load in the country problem right now. Work now in this country, the timber back they live power, local.
We therefore take the log them, pin them in a container, pack it in order to work, to even close the container, one over give them, then pay we off. This job and how they pray to all the governments, if we let the job come back. Women themselves now no respect to because they get money. Any area when I get job as youth man there, then soon they go there, they get no living. But then can look now the street. Most of my company, it's gonna be a good man there. Some man turn to thief man, dinner streets. Some man turn as a boy. He say an idea in different way. Not in good order self again. They say like somebody who gentle in the community because the work who sign with the girl, don't call loss. And the work I want is to see any day, early morning, evening time, we there all night. Now they able day, they will call you good youth man. Part of the job, yeah, no good youth man not in this community. So problems here, and it's one at a person thief is that.
Now when somebody idle, now they go patriotic conduct. But if you not idle, they go engage. And if you then lift this ban here, all the youth man them, with the help of Papa Gomi, they lift the ban, then go engage part and work them. And then go deep part and loading and they offloading, they go make them they abstain from violence. If somebody call and say for go fetch or for go by election business or campaign or then go tell the person, now how would they sustain themselves, now how would they get to survival. Then go gather prefer than day, then they go deep see where they count disturbance for them or we will disturb their work. So you know with the priority conduct.
This suffering is not only limited to the youth, as all the women and children are currently going through the hardest of times owing to the halt in timber activities.
And we will be the suffer. Now oyster and cockle will be the pool. What mangrove wood? Tell you go sell that mangrove, they sell that cockle, it not be easy for me. But this timber will be calm. The day when we see them begin putting by, we've been glad because we don't get we sell picking they can't work, we sell they get we sell they eat. So when they AC timber, then they load up at the motor car, then they pay them. Any motor car where they flop, they pay them. So when they pay them, like me on picking, they put 50,000, put in my pocket, the balance, they go give me all. Say, Mama, go buy this. Maybe they go to school, but he left the school because of money no day. When in the work now, for me picking there for pay for the small one there. And he do it for me. For his timber, he stop now. Hey, me brother, right now, so it's a God and this day not easy. It's not easy. Pastor gather we self back, we go broke stone. A stone they broke right now, we survive so. And remember our stone work, it's not easy for you, now so pain. You got for pay school, you got for do this. Now you know how the country, the rest down there, all things down there. Who still go able to get at this stone here? So do you with the big una the Papa government, una the government, all this. We are let una help we for God and there. They left this team and let go able stand again like how we dey stand. We picking them they suffer. We say so bond we dey suffer. Tell to we Papa there. Tell to we picking them. Let if not work on salon they are big because work no dey. If they work they see the man they know they picking them no dey. How we go able to survive?
In a country where youth unemployment is already a serious problem, shutting down one of the few reliable sources of employment only worsens the living condition of a large majority of civilians.